Nervously awaiting the Independent Television Commission's announcement of the winners at 10 o'clock this morning. The stock market has been awash with rumours and leaks since the bids for the 16 licences were submitted last May. Any surprises from the ITC this morning could trigger some violent price movements.
If, as expected, Thames and TVAM lose their franchises, then the damage inflicted on their share prices is likely to be minimal. Much of it has already been done. Since the sealed envelopes were delivered to the ITC in May, Thames' share price has fallen by more than 50%. But its survival as a business is not entirely dependent on the franchise.
Thames' share price has been weak for some time because people have assumed that they will lose, and I think Thames unquestionably does have a future as an independent production company. There are the possibilities that a satellite television company or another company might make a bid for it. So I don't see significant downside for Thames.
Unlike Thames, TVAM has no programme library, but it does have £40 million in cash. Of those seen by the city as borderline cases, Granada, quite apart from its wide range of non-television interests, would be in a similar position to Thames.
Granada is expected to win, and I think if it failed to win, people would therefore mark the shares down. But I don't think they would mark them down significantly, and that Granada certainly has a future as an independent production company.
As for TVS, which has seen its share price collapse to below 30p since May, it's bid so much for its franchise that the city thinks it may be better off without it.
In the case of TVS, they've bid so much that either to win or lose is not necessarily, neither one is necessarily an enormous advantage to them. I think that TVS's price would come off.
The real surprise could come from LWT. Its preference shares have risen sharply this week on the expectation that it will retain its franchise. If it doesn't, they'll have a long way to fall.
Names of the companies awarded licenses to broadcast on the ITV network to be known as Channel 3 from 1993. Beatrice Hollier reports.
There are 40 applications for 15 regional ITV contracts and the national breakfast television licence currently held by TVAM. After deliberating for 5 months, the ITC will inform winners and losers by fax this morning, a few minutes before the official announcement. Only 3 ITV companies, Central, Scottish and Border, are unopposed. Those facing rival bids include the biggest ITV companies, makers of some of Britain's most popular programmes. Thames, maker of Minder, and Granada, home of Coronation Street, which has held its licence for over 30 years. TVAM, the only national broadcaster in the bidding, has been challenged by 2 rival consortia. Under the Broadcasting Act, the new contracts are awarded to the highest bidder, but companies also have to pass a programme quality threshold based on programme quality and on the strength of their business plans.
The checks and balances built into the new system mean that no bid will automatically succeed, especially as the ITC's only comment has been the quality threshold has been used a lot. It could be the biggest shake-up commercial television has ever seen. Equally, there could be little change. But one clear winner is the Treasury, which will get an unprecedented amount of money under the new system.
Winning bids for the new 10-year commercial television licenses. It'll be the end of a long drawn-out battle that's involved 40 companies and vast sums of money. It's thought that at least 4 of the existing 16 franchise holders could lose their licenses. Sue Saville reports.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Blind Date, and here is your host.
Not even Blind Date, one of the highest-rated television shows, is safe in the overhaul of ITV's franchises. The programme's maker, London Weekend Television, has had to bid in a blind auction. Today it'll know if it's won or lost.
It's been a combination of chess, poker, chance and elaborate strategic assessments. I mean, intellectually extremely stimulating and very interesting when you forget that it's your business that you're bidding for.
In May, 40 companies delivered their applications to the Independent Television Commission in London. They've been judged on the size of their bids and also on their commitment to programme quality. But some experts remain sceptical.
The fact that the Treasury is going to benefit to something approaching £300 million a year, that is money that otherwise would go into paying for programmes. And so I think inevitably the overall quality of independent television is going to be lower than it has been in the past and lower than it need be.
Many existing ITV companies fear auctioning the franchises will bring inequalities into the system. Central Television, which produces Spitting Image, gambled rightly on being unopposed and is believed to have bid only a fraction of what others like TVS in the south have offered to keep their contracts.
There may be a two-tier networking system arrive. I mean, we could see beginning to sort of see the breakup in the ITV system. A group of companies willing to spend more on programs than another group, and there'll be a sort of minimum core schedule which everybody pays for, and then there'll be a kind of premium service available to those viewers who happen to live in the Midlands or Scotland or maybe some other areas which turn out to have been relatively low sums of money.
If the television companies are worried about falling standards, so too might the viewers be. The next 15 months are expected to bring great turmoil while a new system takes shape.
It's going to produce uncertainty in the short term, and that's always, oddly enough, in a way that nobody can quite define, it gets through to the audience. And so always, for the first 6 months to a year after such a change, the ITV ratings have dropped. They will certainly not want that to happen with the economic future that they now face.
Some of the biggest names in television production could lose out. Thames, which makes Minder, The Bill and This Week, is rumoured to be in jeopardy. But it could seek to survive as an independent producer or try to stay in business as a satellite broadcaster, if there's enough demand. The only national franchise to be decided is the breakfast one. TVAM makes £20 million a year, profits now eagerly eyed by the Sunrise and Daybreak contenders. It wasn't always so. The high hopes toasted when TVAM was launched in 1983 soon fizzled out, and the format went down market to avoid financial collapse. After this morning's decision on the new licences, viewers themselves will be able to decide whether the market approach is the best one to maintain the quality of British television.
Well, just in case you were getting confused, you're still watching the BBC, and joining us now from the Independent Television Commission's headquarters in Knightsbridge is the BBC's media correspondent, Nick Hyam. Nick, good morning to you.
Good morning.
How reliable would you say is this speculation that Thames and TVAM may be for the chop?
I think it's probably fairly reliable. This is an exercise which has been widely speculated about in the press, but I don't believe we're going to see many surprises this morning. Thames, it appears, has been outbid by its rival Carlton Television, and I don't think Carlton will have had any difficulty crossing the quality threshold, persuading the Independent Television Commission that its programmes are up to scratch. And TVAM, too, seems to have been outbid by both its rivals, rather surprisingly, since TVAM, as that film made clear, is a very rich company.
It's worth noting, though, isn't it, that the last time this franchise process occurred, though of course it wasn't in this auction process, that all the predictions were proved wrong. What about outside London? Which are the companies which are thought to be vulnerable there?
I think probably the companies which are most vulnerable are the two on the south coast, TVS and TSW, which have both bid very high. It may seem absurd in a situation in which the licenses are supposed to go to the highest bidder that they could lose, but it could well be that the Independent Television Commission will feel they've actually bid too much, and that they wouldn't be able to afford the programmes that they've promised, especially if advertising revenue weren't to hold up as everybody hopes it will. Otherwise, outside London, I think the other interesting one, and quite a difficult one to call, is Granada, where Phil Redman, the maker of Brookside, has put in quite a strong bid, and again is rumoured to have outbid Granada. In that case, I think there's a feeling that North West Television, which is Phil Redman's company, may not have passed the quality threshold. Some of its proposals for regional programmes won't have come up to scratch.
Granada, I think, feeling very confident despite what you're saying. What about some of the smaller companies, Ulster and Grampian? They're up against quite heavy challenges as well, aren't they?
Yes, it's rather more difficult with some of the smaller companies. It's more difficult, I think, for a small group to come up with the quality ideas if they're outside the system, which will persuade the Independent Television Commission that they're a runner. On the other hand, some of the small ITV companies don't have a wonderful record, and it would be not beyond the bounds of possibility to find that Grampian is ousted. Ulster, I don't know. The Northern Ireland situation obviously is a very difficult one, and there are considerations there, I think, not purely of programmes and money, but also of politics.
Fascinating and, of course, extremely important to everybody in the industry, but insofar as the viewer is concerned, is the viewer going to see any radical changes, do you think, as a result of all of this?
I think, as Peter Fiddick was saying in the film, that there is a risk that the whole ITV system will be destabilised as some major new companies come in wanting to supply programmes, having rather different ideas about how the schedule should be run and what kind of programmes we should be viewing. If all the promises are fulfilled, then ITV quite possibly will look rather better. Certainly the regional programme side of things will be improved. Most of the bidders are promising to spend more on their regional news and other regional programmes, and that part of the service could well improve.
We've got an hour and 7 minutes to go. Nick Hyam, down at the ITC, thanks very much indeed for joining
us this morning to learn whether or not they'll still be on the air after January 1993. The results of the auction of the ITV franchises will be known in about an hour's time.
The day of reckoning for the 16 ITV companies comes after 5 months of suspense. The licences will go to the highest bidders, provided they pass a quality threshold. And the 40 applications submitted in May bulge with promises about the range and quality of programmes and details of how they've been paid for. The bidders have had to convince the Independent Television Commission and its staff that they can keep their promises. The winners and losers will learn their fate by fax this morning. Among those thought to have been outbid are the biggest company, Thames in London, and the breakfast company, TVAM, who could both lose their licences. But Granada and London Weekend, also reportedly outbid, could survive if their rivals aren't considered good enough. The highest bidder of all is Southampton-based TVS, which has pledged £60 million a year from the start of the new licences in 1993. But despite its high bid, TVS may not succeed. The Commission thinks it wouldn't have enough money left to make high-quality programmes.
Nick Hyam, 1993. We'll be back, as usual, tomorrow, won't we?
Ready for the competition.
6:30 in the morning. Do try and join us. But for this morning, from Laurie and from me, from all of us, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello and good morning to you. It's Wednesday the 16th of October and you're watching TSW. In a moment you can see Jeopardy. First though we join Richard and Judy to hear about